meeting of the Clear Creek Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and that its notice has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code 551. And we have no community input, so for information discussion, we'll start with the cadence and accountability.
Great, thank you. We are, looking at cadence of accountability, and this establishes a structured, ongoing process for monitoring, evaluating, and improving educational outcomes. And it ensures every component of the learning system works together to guarantee all students receive a world-class education. At the beginning of each board workshop, we will share metrics around progress towards selected 24-25 strategic plan district goals. So this presentation will focus on beginning of the year data to drive academic success. Today we'll review selected metrics for Goal 2, engaging in a world-class education or learning experiences, and Goal 3, program evaluation. And so we will have Dr. Henley and her team, and they are all here. We're so grateful for the team here today to just kind of share those metrics, and then there will be any opportunities for questions and discussions after that. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Henley.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. Thank you, board, for letting me be here this afternoon. And I want to thank my team for helping me gather this data and put it together in a way that I think makes sense as we move forward with reporting it through the year. So we'll start with, so it's District Goal 2, Strategy 2.1. We're really looking at that comprehensive framework where all students have access to curriculum, assessments, interventions, and extensions for an academic achievement. So data that we're presenting today really is beginning of the year baseline data for Amplify, as well as we're adding green box in this report, and then our high priority learning standards that are grades 3 through 8 high school, and our content areas, RLA, math, and science. And so our first slide, when I get there, is really that beginning of the year baseline data, and we're looking at Amplify and we're looking at Dreambox. We'll start with Amplify first, and we look at Amplify in grades K through 2 because that's consistent measures from year to year. We are showing this year's data 24-25 beginning of the year, and we did a comparison to 23-24's beginning of the year simply because Amplify measures the same consistency from year to year for the grade level. And so you'll see in this that our grade 1 and grade 2 are starting a little bit better than our grade 1 and grade 2 started last year. Kindergarten is a little bit lower, but kindergarten, we never know how they're going to come in and what skills that we have to teach them. So again, this is beginning of the year baseline data. Dreambox, this one we do consistently K through 5, and we're reporting again on 23-24 and 24-25 comparison. So let me explain what you're looking at a little bit so it makes sense. In kindergarten, they come in with the assumption that you're starting at 0-0, and by the end of their K year, you should be close to a grade 1, so it should be close to a 1.0. Same thing for grade 1, you want to be starting as close to 1.0 as you can and moving up to a 2.0 and so forth and so on. So you'll see for the most part, we're right there. We are better performance than we were the previous year. And so we've shown some increases in our Dreambox baseline beginning of the year data. So the next piece we talked about is our high priority learning standards. This one, we are showing just 24-25 beginning of the year. And we're doing that because if you'll recall, last year we started HPLS, and it was a new year, new system. We had 3 standards for content areas, different grade levels that we were tracking. This year we've made some adapts, so when you learn, when you build a system, you learn the processes. And so in working with my team, in working with curriculum instruction, we really did a true pre-assessment beginning of the year. So we increased the number of standards and content grade levels, as well as we gave every kid a pre-assessment. And that pre-assessment tested all of the standards, whether they've been taught or not. And so this is just a pre-teach % correct by grade band for math, RLA, and science. You're going to notice that math is a little bit lower than RLA, and that's honestly to be expected. Math has some higher level or standards that they may not have been exposed to, whereas RLA is that recursive instruction. And so I think this is a good baseline measure. So for us to have the next first teach percent, which will track just those standards that are on that first teach. So that really brings us to our next discussion point.
Okay, and what I'd like to do is just take a minute, and if there's any questions or discussion about that, we're going to move on to a different goal. But looking at some of this data, and our cabinet team is here in the room to answer any specific questions that you might have.
Sure. So I guess my first question is, what if the beginning of the year scores should be like for kindergarten it's 0.0, first grade it's 1.0, 2.0. It seems like our beginning of the year scores are kind of, they're improving, but they're still below that target. So at least on Dreambox. So I guess what do we conclude from that? It seems but by the time you get to grade 5, it seems like the students come in half a year behind starting grade 5. Is that something? Am I interpreting that right, or is that something that we are concerned about?
I don't think so remember, this is an average of all the students.
Right.
Right, and whether they've been with us from the beginning of the year. So you're not misinterpreting it, no. I'm going to defer to.
Yeah, the other piece too, when was this assessment done? It does.
Earlier this year. There's kind of a window, but you're right. What we see is that in the lower grades, right, they're not as behind as much, and the gap gets bigger over the years, and so that is a piece of data that we're using. And like Dr. Henley mentioned, it's certainly it's not for it's not about everyone. There are many that are on level or even above level. But it does align well. We know Dreambox aligns and correlates well with our STAR results. And so that is the piece that we continue to look at. And so when the teachers get information about their specific students, and then obviously we look at it more holistically, like from the campus level. But it's a piece of information. We typically don't look at it like this because it is much more important to look per student, and we want the teacher to look not globally but per student and where they are. And that's really part of the work this year.
Well, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to figure out, and maybe it would be useful to have the end of year from last year as well, or maybe even the scores for the same students, because I'd be interested to know if we're seeing a summer slide where kids are leaving 4th grade at a 4th grade level, but then they come into 5th grade at less than a pre-5th, like that they're leaving are they leaving 4th grade adequately prepared for 5th grade and then losing something over the summer that we've got to catch up?
That's typical.
That is a factor,
That
and
is
also the
typical.
assessment to the end of the year to the beginning of the year. There's a jump there as well. There's a slide, and there's a bit of a jump on the assessment. But that is something that is a factor that we see and that we deal with. We try to bring in our students for a quick little jump start before the school year starts to get them ready to go and to be ready for this. But that is a factor.
Yeah, because just as much as I want our students leaving 4th grade at that 5.0, I also want them coming into 5th grade at that 5.0. And so if the data really does support that we're seeing a fall off there, then maybe that should inform some of our actions.
We're pushing our goal point higher each year so that we can compensate for that.
But do you think we could be provided that data too?
Yes, sir. We can pull something together for you.
Thanks. And I'd be really curious to see, because we do have some students who are new versus some who have who were here the previous year. Could we see kind of a side by side showing that?
Cohort versus the ones that have been with us for a while. Yes. That may take us a little while longer to pull, just because it's a data pull and a pivot table.
Yeah.
As I look to my experts back there. Just a little bit longer, but we can get that for you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
That's great. Okay, thank you. And like I said, we'll continue. These are great questions for us, and so we do appreciate that. All right, so then looking at the next slide, and you can notice we're talking on goal 2 and 3, both to scale up proven academic programs and replicate best practices and start looking at that, as well as implement an objective evaluation process to improve, modify, or abandon existing district programs and processes. And our program evaluation process, BQ2 regulation, was updated in April of 2024, and progress was discussed during the policy committee in October. We are sharing progress as part of both of these goals, 2.4 and 3.5, and Dr. Henley will provide an update on progress towards these goals and kind of summarize that conversation that we continue that ongoing work in this area.
Thank you, Dr. So I'm actually very excited the direction we're taking program evaluations. It's one giant puzzle and trying to put it all together that makes sense to get it on a cycle. And really we're looking at my department as being that database clearinghouse for 3 versions of program evaluations. So we have a program evaluation, we have a program gauge, and we have a program review. These definitions were in that BQ2 that was approved back last April. So we'll look at program evaluation first. And really this one is that comprehensive, in-depth program evaluation that really honestly should be done or will be done by the external or internal audit process. So these will be the ones that maybe TEA is asking us to do a dyslexia audit, or we had the cybersecurity with technology. We'll take those external evaluations, create an executive summary, and become the clearinghouse for those. And kind of partnering even with our internal auditor as well to put together. So that's really more of the big holistic ones that are done outside or by our auditor that are more controlled. And my department then becomes the clearinghouse and the holder of those. The second level is where our program gauges come in. And this is more about that periodic process of anything that's new, instructionally, a new instructional program or a new idea. This kind of comes from our project charters where we have the implementation, the exploration and development teams. And as the people work through that process, my department becomes a consultant in some of those so that we have goals that can be measured as the program is being initiated and done so that we can do those checks. Is it being done with fidelity? Is it being implemented? What tweaks do we have to make that program successful? And this will help again with that replication of best practices as we move forward. Those will be things like the launch program. So we're collecting data on that so that we can give back to the people that are in charge of launch so they're able to examine that. And so we'll do some evaluations that way. And then the last one really is our program review. This is taking that really comprehensive list that I gave you all back in June, I believe it was, where you have all of those together and really finding a way to systematize that so that we can create a cadence of when they come up for review and really get back on answering some of the questions you've asked us about what happens when one falls off, what happens if something is changing. And so we will basically surround those by the assistant superintendent in charge of that department and work with the directors. We're creating some processes and some forms that the internal people will fill out, and my team will then collect, gather, put together a brief analysis based on some of that strengths and weaknesses, growth, replication, or cost analysis. And so really that ties all of our different program evaluations and tries to put together a way for us to easily track that data in the different programs we have in the district. So that's really our program evaluation update. Any questions on that?
Questions?
So yeah, I guess my question here, how close are we to having the comprehensive list of programs?
So the one I gave you in June that had all of, and I can't remember how many, to be honest, we added the cost analysis back to that. So we're gonna take that and my team will work through, it's gonna take me this year at least to get more of cohesive, like under Ms. Stallings will have these things and then we'll have the forms. It's really getting the process together and how to distribute it out to get the feedback and information together on the different programs. Does that kind of clarify a little?
I mean,
So it's
that,
taking all of that list where I gave you every process and trying to nail it down to the ones that are really focused on instruction.
okay, yeah, and when you said that, I've been going through trying to find that list, but so maybe that answers my question, but
Yeah, we can, because we shared that list. We'll, yes, absolutely. So we can, give you that list maybe in the Friday packet. And as we went back through and kind of looked at what was passed back in April, there are so many things that are happening now. I mean, I think that's what, as we started talking and go back, there are some big evaluations like Dustin got the cybersecurity grant and the cybersecurity audit. How are we going to quantify that and name that and make sure that that is categorized as a program eval? So we named that one. Dyslexia, we've got a dyslexia TA audit right now. GBC DHH. Let's go ahead and categorize, because these things are in different places, and trying to bring all those under one and into one place. And then going back to that program review, that's where we got to all of the things, and then bringing that down to really a clearinghouse of probably even more than we thought. Initially, it's like we're not categorizing some of these big program evals that we're doing, or if the board says, let's go back to the Gibson report, a decade ago, but the board says, hey, we want to have a special ed program eval, that would be outsourced.
It was June 27th.
okay. Oh, it's June 27th.
Instructional support, and there's a link to the program inventory report draft 1.
Mm-hmm. But we'll go ahead and resubmit that,
Okay.
Friday,
Thanks.
and yeah.
Oh, it says I don't have access to it. Maybe that's why. So, yeah, I clicked the link and it wouldn't open.
But also in our policy, I think in our last policy meeting, we kind of reviewed, the categories, I believe. So if you go back to our policy, the October 1st, it'll probably be in there.
Okay.
If not, we'll resend it.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
email it to them right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and making sure that everyone has access.
And then I just wanted to say, when we were going through, our policy committee, and we were actually talking about this, because Dr. Henley gave a brief, report of it, that we're doing something that a lot of districts either contract out or don't necessarily do because of the time, the costs, et cetera, the man hours to do that. But it's going to help us when, as we look at budgets and programs and evaluations and things of that nature, what's working, what do we need to, maybe put more resources into. So I will say that I understand why it takes a long time, because after looking at the data and things of that nature, it's a lot. So thank you for, first of all, defining what a program is. And I didn't even know they had textbooks on it.
Yes.
But, then doing due diligence in terms of making sure that that list and everything gets categorized, what's instruction, what's extracurricular, what's, UIL, so thank you.
So thank you all very much for the time that y'all put into this. This, for me, it comes back to that accountability factor that, we're all held to, and we want to make sure that, as we move forward, that, accountability for providing that world-class education, it's very important to all of us. We're a big district with lots of programs. Trustee Bowen's question is one that I've shared, and it's been an ongoing topic of discussion. Creating processes, you have some engineers over here that would probably love to, give advice on, how to do it or how they do it. One of the things I think that also jumps out at me that I think to try to give us updates on as well was the 3.5 note that said abandon existing district programs and processes. We're adding launch, we're adding cybersecurity, we're adding a lot of programs around the district. And are there certain ones that aren't being utilized, or maybe it's obsolete? 10 kids sign up for or something like that. So I think that's kind of where we're at is, we know we need to grow. We know we need to move forward. We're trying to hold everybody to these high standards. And so as we are doing that, which ones, are we abandoning and of course why? Or do we need to re-energize it? Maybe it was a great program at one time and kind of lost the teacher or the excitement. So again, as we go forward, having those lists are very important, but also, your creating processes, let us know, which programs people are signing up for, which ones that we need to, kind of, abandon, but I do appreciate, we all appreciate all of your time and effort putting this together. So keeping that standard, providing that world-class education. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and going back that BQ2 regulation is really helpful for us because that was passed, and now then we can kind of use that. And I'll be honest, we didn't find other districts that really had this process. So, I do appreciate so much the team and a lot of input into trying to create a process and to capture all the things that are already going on. So, into one source.
And that goes back to that cadence of accountability. It comes full circle with it. So, yeah, the reg there, Trustee Bowen, maybe something also to look at where we're looking at the list of programs as well. Anything else?
And we'll continue to update our goal and some of this learning we got from Tessa Tasby, that maybe a beginning of every workshop, sharing a few metrics and asking those questions, and then we'll continue to do updates, not necessarily on these. We probably will look at, you can help me out. So when would we go back and look at, say,
For example, when will we
Amplify?
see the percentage first teach results?
January, because they're all
Thank
given at different times in this first semester because the different teams being taught at the different times. So they're every grade level of the.
So January.
So January there'll be an update
revisit.
of everything.
We'll have an update for you.
Of everything, with the Amplify. So like I said, so here's an Amplify, and then we'll do that again in January. We've kind of worked through that,
Green
Right,
box, the
right.
academic.
Okay, good, yeah. So, we'll keep going back, and we just created a cadence of accountability, and we will certainly go back and look at if we need to make modifications or what we need to do, but all around our goals.
Just to put the programs into perspective, it's a 121-page document.
Yeah,
I mean, we're not talking about a list. We're talking about, a book of programs here. So take your time.
There's quite a few on that list.
Which also, because of the size of the document and all of the programs, is why it's important that the district is evaluating this. And if there are any of those in there that we need to let go and then be able to afford a new program, a new launch or Leader in Me or something with technology. It's going to take time. All right. Next item is our consent agenda. Have anything to report?
Mr. President, or Vice President,
Yeah. Yes, Ms. Shepard.
I move to approve the consent agenda as posted.
Yes, Ms. Shepard. And
Any comment?
any comments? Questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? It's going to be passed. All right, so next item, we will go into closed session. Oh, wait, sorry, no, yeah, length of terms for trustees. Got it, thank you.
Okay, great. And I'm going to ask Ms. Sar Mechanic to come up. And as discussed during the September Legislative Affairs Committee meeting, Texas Education Code Section 11.059 allows trustees of independent school districts to serve terms of 3 or 4 years. Clear Creek ISD Board Policy, BBB Local, provides that trustees serve 3-year terms. A change in the length of trustee terms from 3 to 4 years would promote stability and save time and money by only requiring the district to conduct elections every other year instead of every year. However, changing the length of trustee terms requires careful consideration and legislative action. I will turn this conversation over to Ms. Sarah Mechanic to lead our discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. So as you said, we discussed this during the Legislative Affairs Committee. This issue first came up when this past May election, so May of 24, Harris County was not able to administer our elections for us. And as you recall, after an election recount, an election contest, we were really moving in that direction of wanting the counties to run the elections. But during especially a presidential election year, the primary of presidential elections, the county did not, Harris County in that case, did not have the bandwidth and capacity to administer the election for us. So putting us in the position of, again, having to run our own election. Having elections obviously every year is costly. And so there was, question at that time about whether the board could move from 3 to 4 year terms, but that does require legislative action. Fortunately, we have an example of such action that was taken in the 88th regular legislative session. And so in your background information, you've got the bill analysis of House Bill 2285. That was a Collin County, that was legislation proposed by a state representative from Collin County, Texas, and that allowed a specific school district in a county of a certain size and with a municipality of a certain size to be able to have its board pass a resolution by December 31st of that year. So the legislation became effective September of 23, and the board had to pass a resolution by December 31st of 23, determining how, if the board chose to change the length of the terms, how that transition was going to roll out. And so what we would propose and are seeking for the board to decide whether to authorize the superintendent to meet with Representative Bonin, Senator Middleton, to seek similar legislation to what happened, the House Bill 2285. And specifically, just the in the statement of intent for 2285, it talks about the costly nature of holding elections, causing independent school districts to want to change the length of terms, and specifically states that current law doesn't provide for such a change without state approval. We discussed why that might be in the Legislative Affairs Committee, and thinking it's probably because the voters, when they vote in trustees, it is for a 3-year period in the case of CCISD. And so any transition would require an addition of time to some or a reduction in time. And we're not asking at this time to have the conversation about how that rollout would occur, but rather just seeking authorization for the superintendent to initiate those conversations, to seek the legislation in order to enable the board at a later time to pass a resolution moving to 4-year terms. What we would propose that it would be 4-year terms. So the elections would be conducted every other year during an odd number of years, so that we would only have to conduct elections every other year rather than every year.
Thank you for the explanation. Any questions?
Yeah, I presume this being legislation, it would be probably something similar to the resolution authorizing Collin County, and that it would have to affect, I would believe, all of Harris County. Do we know if there are any other ISDs in Harris County that are interested in changing?
So in the case of House Bill 2285, it stipulated that it was a school district, applied to a school district in a county with an administrative office, central office located in a county with a population of less than or between 1 million and 1.25. So I think it would be similar. So it would be Galveston County, right? Okay. And a municipality with a population of, in that case, it was 4,500 or less. So we would look at League City's demographics and seek legislation for Galveston County and League City. So it would probably only apply to us. We're just advocating for CCISD.
No. It would be very difficult to do that, and would be, I would think it would be subject to a challenge. But on the other hand, you could write it so that it just applied to Galveston County. I'm sorry, I overlooked the fact that the district headquarters had to be located in a particular county. Do we know if there's any other Galveston County districts that might be interested in switching?
We have not had those conversations.
Okay.
I think majority of them are 4-year.
They're on that timetable
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
So one question I had, and this is it didn't even occur to me until after we had the meeting, but does Districts of Innovation give us a way out here, or can we not use that on?
Yeah, so the Districts of Innovation, there are very specific statutes to which it applies, and this is not one of the statutes. And this is not something that we have exempted ourselves, but I don't believe we would be able to exempt ourselves out of this statute. Well, because the thing is, on its face, when you read the statute, it currently does allow for 3 or 4 year terms, but the legislature has very, very clearly stated that once that selection is made by a school district, that changing from one to the other, which does necessarily require an addition or subtraction or both of certain length of time to certain trustees who've been elected, that requires specific legislation to allow that to happen.
Okay.
So it really isn't a question of being exempted from the law. So that's a great question.
And really, all we're doing right now is just authorizing our superintendent to seek the conversation and possible legislation.
And I do like Trustee Bowen asking about if there are any other schools that might, because then that way, when you do go to have that conversation, we can say these districts might also be interested. We can maybe find out how many are on 3 years.
In Galveston County, we
Galveston
can certainly do that
Galveston
research.
County. We have not really asked that, so this was just a trustee conversation, so we can absolutely ask our Galveston County consortium groups.
Right, the way the Collin County one was written, it applied to districts that are headquartered in, like, there were 2 conditions.
It was both. It had to meet both the
it was
county size and the
city
municipality size.
So ours would presumably be written for some kind of population window that Galveston County fits in, and some kind of population window that League City fits in. And the thinking would be that it would be a strange coincidence if there happened to be another city out there that also fit those exact another district out there that fit those exact parameters.
Correct, right.
It could happen.
It could happen, right, right.
Trustee Washington.
I don't have anything to add, but I might look something up here while we're talking.
Are you looking up whether there are any others?
Right.
Yes, because it's really not that hard to do,
But just because that piece of legislation had 2 conditions, doesn't mean we couldn't propose one that just has 1 that says Galveston County.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying to model it after something, but I mean, it sounds like a one-off anyway.
The thing is, when you write bills
Yeah.
like that, they don't say Galveston County, because the state can't pass laws that only apply to one county. What they have to do is they have to come up with strange conditions that only happen to affect Galveston County, but could also theoretically affect others that are similar. So, like, this was written for counties with a population between 1 million and 1.2 million. And Collin County was the only one at that time.
Right, and the municipality of
Right.
less than 4,500.
So ours would be something like population between 200 and 250,000 or whatever it is in Galveston County. And then if Brazoria County also happens to fall within that during that time period, then it could apply to them too, or
It does.
Tarrant County or one of these others. So, but they're always very careful about how they do that.
if they cut it off at 375, they could exclude Brazoria, but if they cut it off at 400, it would include Brazoria. That's why I was going for that.
And again, this is just to authorize her to start the conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to
We're not
do it.
writing anything with them. It's to start having that conversation.
Yeah. The one difference that we did talk about in the committee meeting was the timing of when we would switch the elections of it, because I mean, we sat down and looked at the terms and what would cause the least disruption going to the new system, and it seemed like having one more even number election in 2026 allows us to have the fewest like truncated terms and extended terms in order to get everybody on the new schedule. So we would want to write it so that we would not pass our resolution until after the 26 election, but get it in time for 27 and then go 27, 29, 31 onward.
Anything else? Anybody like to make a motion?
Yeah. Mr. Vice President,
It's Trustee Kennedy.
I move that we authorize the superintendent to seek legislation permitting the board to change the length of trustee terms from 3 years to 4 years.
I have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Now, we're ready for closed session. So, it is 5:06. The board will now move to a closed session as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551.001, concerning purposes permitted by the act, including 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, 551.074, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignments, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against the employee. start with first item, consider approval of Director of Business Services. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Vice President,
Yes, Mr. Guy.
I move that the board approves the superintendent recommendation of Paige Fahey for Director of Business Services.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Any comments? Okay, all in favor, please raise your right hand.
Okay, and just very quickly, Ms. Fahey is currently the Assistant Director of Accounting and Budgets. She's been in CCISD Finance Department for over 6 years and began her career in our district as a temporary employee in the Business Services Department. She has a bachelor's degree in education and a master's degree in accounting. We're excited about a smooth transition from her current to this new position. Thank you.
All right, next item, motion.
Mr. Vice President,
Yes, Ms. Checker.
I move to approve the recommendation of superintendent to approve the recommendation for Christina Ford as Director of Counseling and Student Services.
Ms. Checker. Any discussion?
I just wanted to say I wanted to thank Ms. Ford for, filling that role for the past 6 or 7 months. She's done a lot, and I think she'll be good for that position. So, but, definitely thank her for the heavy lifting that she's done up to now.
Thank you, Mr. Checker. All right, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you all very much.
Okay, yeah, and just kind of to tap into that, thank you for noticing that and naming that here at this meeting. She has been interim since March and has worked for over 20 years in Clear Creek ISD as a teacher, as a counselor, and then at that district level, both elementary and some time at the intermediate level also as a counselor. And I know that I was thinking today she's busy finalizing our CCISD College and Career Night, which is Wednesday. So she works with campus and district leaders, and I think she'll do an outstanding job. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, our third action item to consider.
Mr. Vice President,
Mr. Bowden.
I guess I could say president. You're acting president.
Yes.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation of Clifton Huffman for Director of, and I'm going to get this wrong, I'll just read it. Director of Information Management Services.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Passes. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and Mr. Huffman does come to us from Spring Branch ISD, where he served as Senior Application Engineer for over 10 years. And we look forward to adding his strong talents and skills to our exemplary team in CCISD under the direction of Mr. Harden. So thank you.
Great addition. All right, and with no other business at 5:25, we're adjourned.
All right.
Good job.
Good one.